Posted by you/Tibbs13. Honestly, this is pretty straightforward. We met about 2 years ago, and I, 23F, instantly had a crush on him, 21N. I honestly thought our first few nights out were dates, up until the point he went on a rant about a girl he had a crush on after a few beers. At that point, my thought process was pretty much, okay, not dates, got it, and I moved on with the intent of friendship. Except, funny thing, it turns out he checks all my boxes. I've never gotten along with anyone this well. People are shocked to find out, or, well, not anymore, but up until about a year after we became friends, that we haven't known each other for years and years. We have the same sense of humor, like the same games and TV shows, agree on politics, and want the same things in life, well enough to get along, but still with enough differences that we can have conversations about it. We discover bands together, we help each other with work and writing papers, I call him when I'm sad, and we both think it feels weird to not see each other for a week. The problem is, I'm completely head over freaking heels in love with a man, and it's starting to get to the point where I don't know what to do. I thought it'd go away, but every time I meet him, it's like I'm falling all over again. My friends have gone from teasing me about it to shooting me pitying looks whenever his name is brought up. My sister wants me to just stop seeing him. I go a week without talking to him, and I think I'm starting to get over it, but whenever I see him again, it all comes rushing back. I don't know what to do. It hurts, and it's not fun anymore. I've been on dates with some amazing guys who like me, but my feelings for my friend are stopping me from falling for someone else. It's starting to feel pathetic, and at this point, I see no good option. He's my best friend, the best I've ever had, and I just don't want to lose him. At this point, I think asking him out would ruin that, since it's been so long since we met. I know the only way, for me personally, to get over someone is to stop seeing them, but I don't want to lose my best friend. The finishing touch keeping me on the hook are these looks he gives me. I've had other friends confirm he does this because I was honestly starting to think I was losing my freaking mind. Whenever we're out in a group, at a party or the pub, whenever I look over at him, it seems he's always looking at me. And these eye contacts last way too long to be normal. Like, a good 6 or 7 seconds of us just looking at each other across the table, or the room, or the bar. And he does this little smile. I've never seen it on him in any other situation. I don't know what it means. I have no idea why we do this or how it came to be, but it's the final freaking nail in this coffin of hopelessness I'm buried in right now. I don't know if I'm crazy and over-interpreting things, which is very likely, if I should just give it a shot and ask him out, even though it might ruin the friendship, if I should just stop seeing him, or if I should just carry on and hope this feeling goes away at some point in the distant future. I'm so frustrated I want to cry. And I have cried, a lot. I just don't know what to do here. Update 5.5 years later. So, hello. A little over 5 years ago, I made a post on this subreddit looking for advice on how to handle my incredibly painful unrequited love for my best friend. I'd honestly forgotten about it until I reset the password on another account and saw Tibbs13 among my email search results. But as I read through the post, I remembered how comforting and terrifying the responses were, being a more or less unanimous ask him out that scared me to death. Sorry that this isn't really a happy update, but I don't know. It felt weird seeing something I wrote in what feels like a different life. The people who responded seemed so genuinely kind and tried to help, so I feel like I weirdly owe some kind of update. Especially for that one dear, sweet commenter whose account is now deleted. I so wish I had a way to reach out to them because that was one of the most thoughtful comments I think I've ever received. And just to recap, with hindsight, I really was in love with this man, and I had been for about 2 years. Like, full 9 yards in love. Struggling to breathe when he talked about someone else but still cheering him on because he deserved happiness levels of in love. If that sounds a bit like obsession to you, that's because it probably was. The thing about unrequited love, the thing that really sucks about it, is that it's incredibly hard to move on from. But until you do move on, your brain keeps obsessing about it to the point where it can be impossible to get anything done. It had been 2 years of that when I made that post, 2 years of pining and pain and an ever-growing pile of crushed hopes. I think I was going a little bit insane, constantly swinging between butterflies and love highs when I was with my friend and the crushing feeling of rejection every time he'd say goodbye. And the obsession over things like how long he'd look at me, how long he'd let a hug last, how fast he'd respond to my texts, things that could either make or break my entire day depending on the answer. On to the actual update, after that primer. About a month and a half or so after I made that post, still trying to hype myself up to actually ask this man out, I accidentally became the head organizer for an event at the university I was studying at the time. Long story short, the person managing me was not kind. I was extremely overworked from the event on top of writing a thesis. I was equally stressed out in my private life due to the whole situation with my best friend, and I ended up going through a pretty severe case of burnout. Add to that the fact that I developed an addiction to booze to try to handle everything, and was also experiencing what was most likely a substance-induced paranoid psychosis, and I was a mess. I ended up moving back in with my dad in September and spent about a year doing nothing but sleeping, crying, playing Skyrim, and going to rehab and therapy. At the start of 2021, I went back to school and slowly recovered. I've been sober since 2020, the paranoia hasn't completely gone away but it's more manageable. I used to think my landlord listened to me through a radon measurement device, and at least that's over, and I think I've got a work-life balance figured out that helps me avoid overworking myself or slipping into free time lethargy because I have too much time off. It was long and painful, but I did it. If you're wondering where my best friend was in all of this, honestly don't know. I went back to look at our text messages, and from what I can see, he tried to call me a few times in early September, I didn't respond, and then nothing until around Christmas when he wondered if I wanted to meet up sometime. I said yes, and then never followed through. He hasn't texted me since January 4, 2020. Now, to be clear, I don't blame him for not reaching out more. My non-response is what ended that friendship. I know, because it also ended every other friendship I had at the time. I don't know, booze addiction, deep depression, and crippling paranoia may be a fair explanation for one day stopping contact with all of your friends, but I still deeply regret those choices. If I were to make a relationships post today, it would be about how the frick you word an apology after behavior like that, 5 years down the road. Sorry, I feel like this is starting to become a journal. I'll stop my reflections there. So, about my love for my best friend, with some years of hindsight and therapy behind me. I don't think I was in love with him. I think I was in love with the idea of him. And I think I was obsessed for sure, but looking back, I don't know. I genuinely don't know. I think a part of me really liked the fact that this was a person who so clearly wasn't interested in me. Genuinely, if he was, that would shock me to find out because he spent 2.5 years ignoring the, in hindsight, very obvious attempts I made to deepen the relationship. Some examples include him saying he's waiting for the right person, me responding, sometimes I feel like I already have. Do you ever feel like that? And him going, nah, I don't think so. Me following that up with, maybe you just don't know. The heart is weird sometimes, and him going, I'm pretty sure I'd know. One time we talked about why people fall in love, and I genuinely tried to convince him that a deep friendship was all you needed, while he insisted that there needed to be a level of sexual attraction as well. I tried to get him to do that 36 questions that will make you fall in love thing with me. I kept trying to find excuses to hold his hand, rest in peace, my palm reading career, which was nothing but a thinly veiled attempt at finger touching, and him resolutely never going along with it. Ditto with hugs, arm touching, and sitting just a little too close whenever we went out so I could hear him better, which he normally responded to by saying, we should go outside so you can hear better if it's too loud in here. Very thoughtful, but very much not the goal. One night, when we were alone in my apartment after a club event, after a particularly long shared look, I asked him what he was thinking about in that kind of I don't want to break the illusion soft voice you use when you're really freaking close to someone you like. His response? I don't know if I agree that Geertz's metaphor about blinking makes that much sense, actually. For context, we'd bickered about that earlier in the night since we'd just read an article about it in class. I did not expect it to make a comeback at that point. Another night, when we were out together and there had been a lot of looks and closely leaned and laughing, he pulled me aside by the hand to talk to me. My heart was racing, only for him to ask if I knew whether one of my friends was single because he thought she was really freaking cute and might have been looking at him all night. Looking back, at least some of this stuff is sort of funny. I have no idea if he knew or knows now that I was in love with him. I wouldn't be surprised if some of my old friends eventually told him, but of course, he's never reached out about it. But yes, I think I kinda like the security of this person who clearly didn't like me back. Not that I was doing well with the heartache, but there's a certain kind of messed up comfort that comes from pining for someone who doesn't want you back. Like, the highs I get when I got something that felt like confirmation made up for the lows of crying in my apartment stairway when I got home after a denial. Today, I mostly just feel bad for him and ashamed of myself. Regardless of whether he knew or not, and I'm trying to cling to the fact that he seemed to at least continue wanting to be friends as some indicator that he never felt creeped out or uncomfortable, I think my behavior was pretty freaking creepy, for what it's worth. And in the end, once I did get that distance between us, the feelings went away after some 6 months or so. My therapist recommended not meeting this person again for my own sake, and by early 2020 I wasn't so painfully in love anymore. A while later, I ended up meeting a guy I clicked with just as much, who actually liked me back and showed it. We've been together for almost 3 years now and are talking about starting to try for kids at some point soon. He'd like us to get married first but insists he wants to be the one to propose, so I'm just walking around waiting for the day. Even if it's not a huge surprise or secret, he just wants to get that moment of going down on one knee, and who am I to deny him? I'm slowly growing old and boring. I'm sober, I go to my boring, stable, mid-career 9-to-5 job. I saved for my retirement and traveled during the summers. I helped my dad out on his farm. I crochet little animals for my newborn niece. I come home to a man who plays his silly video games, I play my silly video games, and we go for walks or to the museum and bicker about whether to get fat on takeout or not. I have some regrets about how my early 20s played out, but by God, I wouldn't want to go back. Oh, and I genuinely did not exaggerate those looks. I remember them very clearly, and a mutual friend once even commented on it. I still have no idea what was up with those. He doesn't strike me as the kind of person who would try to keep someone on the hook or anything, more like he was just painfully socially oblivious. But I still wonder so much about those goddamn looks, man.